and it should be done by December 1st. The Cimarron pumping station that pump the water from Cimarron to our water here was renovated. The pumps are like state certified. The Mayor Schuster has
Very good.
we also had the Financial Advisory Board meeting due to COVID sanctions on October 22nd, and we finances for presentation to the meeting this evening. That's all I have.
Pro Tem.
Aside from the water board, the authority board meeting was at noon via phone call due to COVID. New business, they went over reports, financial statement was passed, summer food program September, which I believe was their last districts. That passed the NRPA grant financial statement and investment register was reviewed. Under the executive director's report, he stated that the organization of the Northern Housing Authority is going well. Things are moving along with adding in Taos and Las Vegas. Taos is adopting the call-in organization plan from Raton's plan. So Mr. Bach is very happy with how things are moving along there. And the Center for Community Innovation is not met, that board. However, they have been working hard and diligently in helping businesses apply for the variety of grants to maintain business. That's all I have.
Alrighty, thank you. As for myself, Commissioner Chatterley just said that the New Mexico Municipal League Board of Directors met. Everything went fairly smoothly there. She gave a good report on that, so there's no need to rehash that. I did attend the North Central New Mexico Economic Development District Board of Directors meeting on September 25th. A couple of items that happened there. They approved their budget of $3.25 million. They also approved the cost allocation plan for the staff. They adopted a new organizational chart to include all new staff that has been hired. They approved the non-metro budget, which I forgot to write down the amount, but I believe that was between $35 and $40 million. They also approved the non-metro area plan. This is what they turn into Aging and Long-Term Services Department as to how the senior citizen centers now are going to do in the coming years. It was a 2-year contract. It's the guideline of how they monitor all of the sites and everything and what their role in that is. So that was a 2-year contract. Had some job descriptions to rewrite, and those were approved. It was for provider specialists 1 and 2, and then consumer coordinators positions 1, 2, and 3 out of the Tucumcari location. Corrected an audit finding regarding contributions to the para. That was approved. They have also decided to establish an emeritus position on the board of directors, and this is mainly to recognize individuals with outstanding contributions and service to the COG through the past years. They made a change to the appointment to the ReadyNet Board of Directors. That change, I believe, was to remove Monica from that Board of Directors, and they've added Lisa Cedillo to the Board of Directors for ReadyNet. That was their big internet project with the Indian tribes and that. Under the Executive Director report, a couple of things. All the openings that were vacant with the COG have been filled. Replacement for Marcia Medina was to be named in October. Marcia is in charge basically of non-metro and community services. And they have named the replacement. Her first name's Crystal, and I forgot her last name.
I was gonna look it up, I can't remember either.
I think it's Gutierrez, but don't quote me on that. But her first name is Crystal. And they have thus far, fingers crossed, have not had any COVID issues within their staff, so they were feeling pretty good about that and feeling very lucky, they said. So that's a good thing. And the aging conference will continue throughout the rest of the year virtually. They have a schedule out. You can join in on some of their activities, reports, trainings from now to the end of the year. Generally, that's a huge conference that's done at the end of August, but they are doing it virtually this year because of COVID. Today, met with North Central on their SEDS evaluation, and I did not bring that paper with me, but it was on economic development and stuff, where Colfax County, it was for Colfax County on the Zoom meeting today from Colfax. Sean Jeffries out of Cimarron was there, myself attended. Nobody from the county. I'm thinking that's because the county was closed today. But it was kind of interesting. They only got 20 surveys, or 20 participants in the survey that they put out. So the information not quite as good as they were hoping for. But some of the economic development ideas that came out of that survey and some of the stuff that they had done found that we are kind of in line to possibly recruit some light manufacturing, i.e. chemical manufacturing, chemical products, stuff like that. Of course, tourism and recreation ranked very high in our area. And another one that ranked very high was telecommunications. There being call centers and that kind of stuff, but the only drawback there would be the infrastructure. But they were going to send out the results of that in their PowerPoint slide tomorrow. Hopefully that'll be, and when they do get that out, I'll get everybody a copy of that so you can take a look at it. But like I said, there were only 20 participants in the survey, so they didn't really get a good feeling of the entire county. But it was still, it was a good meeting. And then coming up next Friday, New Mexico Municipal League will be meeting with, it's our joint conference with the New Mexico Counties Association, and we'll strategize our legislative priorities between municipalities and counties at that time. And that's all I have. Okay. So moving on to item 7A, approval of October 13th, 2020 regular commission meeting minutes. In your packet, you have time to look through them.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from October 13th, 2020.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as reported. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries. Item B, discussion on proposed vacant building registration ordinance. Mr. Barry.
Mayor Commission, in your packet, I have provided you a draft of the proposed vacant building registration ordinance. This is something that I have worked on here in the past weeks. And just a little history on this. I think that obviously Raton has got an issue with vacant buildings, dilapidated buildings, abandoned buildings. We also have issues with other appearance type of things, generally nuisances. And we want to strengthen up our response to this important issue going forward. And this would be one step in doing that. And so a little history on this. We had in the fire department, we still have today, code enforcement duties, zoning enforcement duties, safety, and that was divided up over 3 management positions. With the hiring of Anthony Burke as the new chief, we have not replaced the deputy chief position, and so we have subsequently, we've got fewer people to do that same level of work, and it's been pretty busy in that department. We've had some wildfire concerns, as you remember, back in Sugar Eat Canyon. We're not actually on the Luna fire, but we're really tracking that closely because of its potential effect on our water supply, and then just in general, other things that department deals with. And so I think the other thing would be courts have generally been compromised due to COVID impacts, and we're talking about an enforcement component. So I put in front of you the vacant building registration ordinance. This is not proposed as an introduction. This is similar to our review of the proposed changes to the animal ordinance, where we want to gather public input. I definitely want to get the input of the commission on this before we introduce it, and there are a couple of other things. The city clerk is working with American Legal. They're the service that publishes our ordinance, plus any updates that we have through the year to the ordinance, and we want to coordinate this action with them so that what they publish is exactly what you consider for passage, and we're talking about numbering there, really. Also, we've got a legal review going of the ordinance. This would deal with enforcement and penalties, and we want to have the city attorney give you an opinion that that's done properly in accordance with New Mexico law. So those 2 things are going on now, but I'll tell you the framework of the ordinance, and then generally I'm asking for your review and comments, and we want to put it out to the public and have the public talk about this. But under this ordinance, there would be a requirement that a property owner that owns a vacant building would have to register that building with the city of Raton, and then there would be a fee, an annual fee that would go along with the registration of that building, and there would be an annual requirement to re-register the building, and we have a fee schedule that would increase over a 5-year period, and then ultimately after 5 years it would cap. It's a relatively modest fee. For a normal size building, it would be $100 the first year, escalating up to $500 ultimately, but for a large building, it would start at $200 and escalate up to $1,000. And we say in the ordinance that that fee would really offset the disproportionate cost that the city deals with in managing these vacant properties. Now, a lot of the vacant properties that we have in Raton are owned by a person or an entity that is not located in Raton. And they really don't see a responsibility for any type of upkeep of that vacant building. They really don't know of the impact that it would have on people in Raton, our residents, our businesses, what our visitors see when they're visiting town. And this ordinance would really remind them that if you own a vacant building, you have a responsibility to the community. Now, typically in a vacant building ordinance, there would also be a requirement for upkeep of the building, or fixing any safety issues or dangerous conditions that might go with the building. However, Raton has a pretty strong dangerous building ordinance, and then we also have a nuisance ordinance. So the dangerous building ordinance would really address a lot of those requirements for security of the building that you might see in the vacant building ordinance elsewhere. A nuisance ordinance would cover not only nuisances that occur with the building, but it would cover things like the abandoned cars, tall weeds, junk on a lot. And then if we have the inappropriate use of a lot, that would fall under the zoning ordinance. So we would have a number of tools at our disposal to try to put into effect this high priority cleaning up of Raton. And I would like to make it our priority going forward, and this would really be the first step on that. Now, to be effective, we talked about the staffing a little earlier in this presentation, and what I'm going to propose to the commission as we go along is creating an independent full-time position to enforce those tools that we talked about. Not only the vacant building ordinance, but the other ordinances that we talked about as well. So we would see a shifting of duty from a department where that really is mixed in with a lot of other duties and sometimes takes a lower priority to those other duties, which are, the other duties are typically emergencies, and so that's appropriate. But I would recommend to the commission that we establish a position or a department which would do this job exclusively and really place our priority on the cleanup of Raton. Now, I would caution the commission and I would caution the public that there is a significant cost that would go with that. And so not only would there be a salary involved in that, but typically when we get involved in a vacant building or an abandoned building or a dilapidated building, there are several conditions that we find out about the building. Number one is contamination. A lot of these buildings that we have in Raton are of an age that there is some kind of concern with contamination. And if you go down the road to accepting the building as a gift or through a condemnation procedure, that's likely to wind up here with the city of Raton as far as the cost. And if we're talking about asbestos abatement, for example, that cost can be significant. Also, we would run into some issues where there is a lien on the building, and we would have to contact that lien holder and find out what their role in this cleanup is going to be, if they have a role. Also, the same thing with property tax. There typically is property tax on some of these unmaintained buildings, and we would have to have a game plan for handling property tax. So I would suggest to you that we're going to use some legal services in taking these cases to court, in dealing with financing institutions, and dealing with entities like New Mexico Tax and Rev as far as property taxes. So I would just caution you that we don't really know what the budget for this initiative would be, but we're going to see some cost if we're going to effectively pursue this. So you have, I think, a 10-page draft of the ordinance. I've really summed it up. The goal of this ordinance is to define a vacant building so that we know what a vacant building is when we see it. Now, your first reaction is, I know a vacant building when I drive by it. However, I think there are lots of situations where a property owner might argue, it's not really a vacant building. You know, I use it for storage, or, you know, I keep it looking in poor shape, so when I'm not here, somebody doesn't, you know, do something to the building, those kind of things. So we've tried to address that in the ordinance, but this is really a working copy, not ready for introduction, and I am asking for everyone's review and their feedback on this so we can put forth a good, effective ordinance when we adopt this. And I'll stop there, Mayor, and answer any questions.
All righty, thank you. As Mr. Berry said, this is just discussion purposes. Commissioner Giacomo or Commissioner Chavez, do you have any questions or comments?
I have a comment on, after reading this pretty good, I think pending the approval of our legal department and the overall general provisions of the vacant building ordinance. And what I was concerned with is that if we would have obligations of vacant building owners, and it's covered in here, well, I'm pretty satisfied with us going forward with this at this time.
Okay.
That's all I have on that.
All right, thank you.
This is Commissioner Doc. My review of the revision seems to be well written. I go along with so far the what we have intact.
All righty, thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else?
Sure, Mr. Mayor, I was looking at this, and I think we all agree that it's a good thing that we need this, along with, like Mr. Gray was saying, the nuisance ordinance and the dangerous building ordinance, and hopefully they can work hand in hand together. I just, as I was looking at the evidence of vacancy, there's a long list of, possible things that could indicate vacancy. I think we're not saying it has to tick all the boxes or tick X number of boxes, but these are just some things. It made me wonder, it seems like a hobby building, something that someone's actually using for a hobby but not living in might end up falling under this, which we would want to discourage as long as the building was kept well. So I just wondered if there was a need for provision for that, or for homes that someone has purchased and cleaned up the outside, and it's vacant at the time, but is possibly going to have construction, but has tried to do the best they can to make it look good. And so those were a couple situations I thought that, I don't know if they're addressed in here. If they are, I don't know that I saw it, but some things to think about. But otherwise, I think it's very well done.
Mayor, Commissioner Chatterley, I think that's a good suggestion. If we have someone that is taking on a project and fixing a building, and it might not require a building permit, maybe there's painting and landscaping going, I think we would want to work cooperatively with somebody doing that. And I think we probably need to strengthen up the language to give the code enforcement person some authority to some discretion, I would say, as far as making that call. If you have a responsive property owner, and that's really what we are intending to accomplish here, is have these property owners responsive to the community and to the city of Raton. So I will take a look at that. I would tell you that if there is a dispute between an administrative decision and the property owner, we have set up the city commission as the arbitrator of those disputes. They would have a chance to come here and lay out their case to the commission as to why they're not covered by the ordinance, why this is not a vacant building, or discuss their plans for the building. And of course, we would like to work cooperatively with property owners. So I think we can take a look at that and maybe strengthen up that language. We do say that if you have a valid building permit, that you would not be covered by this. However, there could be situations where they're doing work that doesn't require a building permit.
I guess my main question is, you have a hobby building, like I think of Mr. Carey in the station, that no one's living in it, it's not a business, it's not producing GRT necessarily, as far as I understand, but, it technically would fall under a definition, but it's not. I mean, I wouldn't ever consider that a vacant building.
Yeah, I don't think we would consider that vacant, but I think we would give some discretion to, staff, but what that means is that it's liable to wind up in front of the commission. And, you've seen some zoning decisions wind up here before, and it's really modeled in a similar fashion to a determination that staff would make on a zoning issue.
Yeah, I think if the building is, under productive use, whether it's, I don't think any of us are worried about those buildings. But yeah, you're right. The definition of productive use is probably a good idea. I'm wondering if, maybe we need to, I think the initial registration fees are fine, but perhaps they need to increase a little steeper as the years progress to.
I had that same
thought.
I thought we could be a little more
lenient the first year and then.
I can tell you that this fee structure is really lower than any other ordinance that I saw, and in a lot of cases it's significantly lower. Yeah. And for the public's information, it starts at $100 for a regular building, goes up to $500, and then as we said, the larger buildings, and we separate the larger buildings, because they have a more significant impact
Sure.
on the community. It goes from $200 to $1,000. That is really modest compared to most communities.
Right. So I think, yeah, we need to, I mean, obviously you're getting recommendations from the lawyer, but we need to like kind of stiffen those up a little,
Okay.
steep it up.
Yeah, I would concur with that.
Yeah, I think initially we can be soft and then,
Yeah.
especially on these buildings that are in such just terrible shape, that really look awful.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Like we were talking earlier, let's give them a tap on the shoulder to begin with and then get a little more forceful with that tapping.
Right.
Yeah. Then boom shakalaka. Yeah.
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. The only other comments I had too, Mr. City Manager, it seems like we have 180 days as our guideline, but on the taxes in arrears, it says for more than 1 year. I think I might know the answer to that, because taxes are only assessed yearly, aren't they?
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Right.
I was gonna say we should bring it in line with 180 days, but since they're only assessed once a year.
Well, I mean,
All right.
let me ask you, attorney, on that, because I get the point. I don't know that when you're in arrears, you know,
Right.
you don't have to maybe wait. Let me look at that and review that with the attorney.
Okay.
So,
Other than that, though, I agree. I think it's well-written and well-needed.
Definitely
And
needed.
definitely like the suggestions that we've heard tonight.
I have one other comment that I've been kind of pondering over, and I don't know if we want to include something like this or not. A lot of these buildings probably they wouldn't be eyesores to begin with, but landlords that are trying to seek tenants but are just having a hard time to find, especially some of our bigger buildings, depending on how the building looks. I don't know if that's something where the officer will be working alongside them, or if we want to specify something of someone's actively really trying to get someone in their building and, you know, how to find it.
I think that, you know, ultimately, when we have a visitor come to town and they look at what we have, they form an opinion, and if it's a favorable opinion, you know, then we're doing the right thing. So I think when we're talking about, especially buildings in the downtown area, the original town site, that are really tough projects, I think if the property owner is making a good faith attempt and meeting their responsibility, and it's not a negative on the community, then you don't want to be punitive, right? So you want to work with them. And again, I think we'll find some language here, maybe instead of just saying we'll give discretion to the code guy, we probably need to define that a little more exactly.
Well, and one would assume that if you're trying to get renters, they're gonna be trying to make that property look enticing.
Yeah. All righty, any other comments? All right, thank you. Well done, Mr. Berry.
Thank you.
Item C, deliberate and act on lodger's tax promo fund advertising and NRA guest guide. Mr. Berry or Mike Lyon?
Mayor and Commission, I'm going to turn this one over to the city clerk, please.
Mayor and Commission, we were originally scheduled to have a lodgers tax meeting, I believe, last week, and then we decided to postpone it because we didn't have really any action items, and then this came in, and so the deadline for this particular publication will be Friday, so we're bringing it to the commission for approval. We did advertise in their map, and so I did bring the actual map from last year so you could see it, but we did do an ad last year. So it's really a map that identifies the various shooting ranges that we have, and then on this side, all of the businesses that advertise. It has kind of a smaller map insert there that shows where the local businesses are located. So our ad is simply just an ad with our new branding, and it has the Explore Raton to direct people to go to our website. So it's something really simple. Last year was the first year that we, I believe, had published in this map, and it's done by a company called Southwest Publications. So if you'd like to look that over. I'll pass it down. The ad, in talking to the company, they do produce about 5,000 of these for the NRA. That's what they get annually. And then the map is handed out as people check in, either to shoot or stay in the RV spots, the cabins, and they also are available in the gift shop. Since the deadline is Friday, it takes about 2 months to produce the calendar, and like I said, they will generate about 5,000 of them. And I couldn't see that it was like a dated material, so I kind of like that. I always hate when a pamphlet has a date on it, and then it expires at the end of the year. So did you have any questions? Or we do have the option to change the ad. We could do something different. It would still be in the same location. And I think Commissioner Chatterley actually assisted us in creating that last year, so I appreciate that. Thank you. But certainly we could change it if there's any ideas.
Looks all right to me.
But like I said, I think the key is to direct people to the exploreraton.com.
I'm just assuming there's money in the print budget line item for that.
Yes.
I'm sure there is, but is there, do you know what the hit rate is on that Raton? I mean, I doubt we can delineate out whether it was from this, but do we know what that is?
I don't, that'd be a question for our market, but.
Yeah, we could certainly get with Patricia Duran and get you some statistics on that. I think when we've talked about billboards and other forms of advertising, we probably would have to create a different website link to be able to tie it back specifically to this ad.
Yeah, I think it'd be not maybe worth it.
Yeah, but there are ways of doing that,
Yeah.
even when it comes to a billboard, but
Yeah,
we typically just brand everything with the exploreraton.com.
yeah. Well, I think it looks good. I think it's worthwhile, so I will move to approve Lodgers Tax Promo Fund Advertising the NRA Guest Guide.
And the agreement was, I guess, drafted for my signature, so I guess with your approval, I would finish preparing the agreement and submit it with a purchase order.
And you don't ask me to.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the contract here with the publication, $459 with Michael Land being the signatory on that. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item D, deliberate and act on resolution 2020-59, authorizing the certification of the City of Raton 2020 capital asset inventory. This was postponed from our October 13th meeting. Go ahead.
Mayor and Commission, as I reported at the last meeting, for some reason this year I've been having a few more issues with the balancing of this report. So as I've been trying to kind of work through my reconciliation of it so that I could provide you with an accurate, I guess, summary that I provide to you with all of the various categories of assets that we account for. That's including land, property. I believe we have over 1,600 capital assets in our database. So this is a critical element of our annual audit, and so this week is the first official week of our audit, and it'll continue into next week. So we're doing 2 full weeks. Most of it will be done remotely with Car Rigs and Ingram. So last week I kind of started gathering up all of the information that was extremely important that they needed to get started on the audit, and by doing so I kind of had to move this kind of down on the priority list, but like I said, it is a high priority, but it was important to me that I got them some of the easier things that I prepare for them, so that starting Monday, this past Monday, that they could start the test work and things that they need to perform the audit. So it's, I still am having a few balancing issues and need to make some additions, but because this is a critical element of our audit, I would like to request that we postpone it one more time, but I'm kind of running out of time, but it will get done, and hopefully have all of the, so what'll happen is once I give this report to the auditors, they pull a sampling, mainly of our additions, deletions, any changes that we've had, and then I also prepare the depreciation schedules which get incorporated into our audit report for accumulated depreciation. So there's several pieces to our capital asset reporting for audit purposes. So I think once the next item on our agenda is going to be approving the quarterly report. Once I can get that off my desk as well and get that turned in by the deadline, this will become my primary focus of the audit.
Alrighty, so we have a recommendation from Michael Ann to postpone Resolution 2020-59 one more time.
Mr. Mayor, is that something that we'll need before the next commission meeting? Is it timely, urgent, for a special meeting, or can it wait until the 10th?
I think it can wait till the 10th.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to then postpone that until November 10th.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to postpone Resolution 2020-59. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Item E, discussion on proposed resolution to adopt a sunset date for temporary suspension of convenience fees on credit card utility payments made online and by telephone for the extension of disconnects during COVID-19 emergency. Mr. Berry?
Mayor and Commission, you'll notice that on the agenda, we have places for discussion, not action by the Commission. We have enclosed a draft of a resolution that we would like to get you thinking about, and we anticipate action in November on this resolution, and it's related to the same kind of policy that's being considered by both utility boards, Raton Waterworks and Raton Public Service Company, and this is related to utilities, as it says in the title, and it comes to the Commission because this is how we, this is one way that we collect fees on solid waste. That's collected by the utilities, and then there's a transfer to the city on that. So what I would tell the Commission is that we would like to, or I would propose that we let the utility boards discuss this, and I know most of you are discussing that in utility board meetings. Let them come up with action on that, and then we'll bring back the identical action to the Commission after the utility boards have worked. I'm going to read the first paragraph of the resolution, and I think it sums up what is involved here pretty well. And it says that whereas the Raton City Commission passed Resolution 2020-17 on March 24th, 2020, and determined that it was in the best interest of our customers to temporarily suspend the convenience fee for credit or debit card payments made online or by telephone during the COVID-19 emergency, and will also extend disconnection of utilities and refuse services for non-payment to the 15th day of the following month of the bill's original due date. And then there's some additional information in the resolution, but that kind of captures what we're doing here. We would consider when this policy would revert back to the normal policy. But I think the concern of utility boards is that the COVID-19 emergency is ongoing, and we're really not sure when restrictions will be lifted, when everyone will be clear to go back to their business or to their jobs. And so it doesn't appear that there's really a justification to repeal that suspension of the convenience fees at this time. So I think the utility boards will consider an extension of that date, and I think they're talking right now possibly to the end of March, and that would put this policy out about a year. But I would recommend, Mayor, that we let them take their action, and then we have that information to come back to the commission with.
All right, thank you, Mr. Berry. Is there any comments or that's for Mr. Berry? All righty. We'll move on to item F, deliberate and act on resolution 2020-63, approval of fiscal year 21's first quarter financial report. Michael Land.
Mayor and Commission, it's hard to believe that it's already, that the first quarter has already passed and that we're almost into November. So this evening we present to you our first quarter financial report for our funds reconciled through the end of September 30th. We've provided you with the cumulative gross receipts tax report. You will see that our October gross receipts taxes, the distribution this month puts us at 1.19% above our general fund budget projections. That does reflect our August business activity, so kind of the end of the, almost the end of the summer. It is still a pretty good distribution considering some of the restrictions that a lot of our businesses are still operating under. It is also reflective of the amount of construction too that we've had in the summer months, so that certainly has helped. And then there's also been an increase in traffic on interstate travel because people aren't flying as much. So we're seeing kind of a combination of all of that with our gas tax. We've talked in the past that the lodger's tax returns are still down because of those restrictions with our local motels. But once again, we really don't have any events to promote, so we haven't really been spending a lot of money, with the exception of the lodger's tax funds that we did allocate towards the convention center boiler and also the Schuler office renovation project. So both of those are kind of wrapping up, and so as we start to close out some of those projects and pay those contractors in full, the balance in the non-promo fund anyway will take a pretty significant hit with very little money coming in. So it's going to take us a few months to kind of accrue and build that fund back up. I've given you a summary. So as of September 30th, our general fund available cash balance was $2,794,620. You'll also see our ending cash balances for the various funds that we have. We have had quite a bit of, like I said, construction activity and grant activity that we've been administering, and so we're trying to spend a lot of our funds as quickly as possible, especially if it's legislative capital outlay, because we do want to go into the next legislative session with most of those monies closed out. I believe we had some correspondence today that the city manager forwarded to me. We've got 2 legislative capital outlay projects that were severance tax bond, and it's my understanding there was a bond sale today, so we hope that we'll have some more information and probably have some agreements to bring back to you once we get those from DFA. So that was on the police cars and the steel building.
Cool.
So we're still kind of waiting to execute agreements on those. We did have another grant that we're in the process of getting reimbursement and closeout, and that's on the senior center oven. So I was glad that we could finally get that done for you, and I think it's a much needed piece of equipment.
Yep.
So hopefully you'll be getting that hooked up soon. And then we also did open the bids and do the notice to proceed on the window project at the Raton Senior Center. So our architect, Alpha Design, is going to be kind of coordinating the construction management on that. And so that was Northeastern Construction out of Las Vegas is going to be the contractor on that project. And so it's my understanding they'll try to work through the winter months and do a few windows at a time. And especially probably since you're closed, now's a good time
Yeah.
to tackle that. So, other than that, I'm sure the city manager will have an update in his city manager report on some ongoing status of the remaining projects that we're working on. But it's been actually a pretty busy first quarter for us, and despite COVID, I think we're still holding our own. And so I will be submitting this first quarter report to DFA. It needs to be turned in by Friday.
All right, thank you, Michael Ann. Any questions for Michael Ann?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2020-63, approval fiscal year 21 first quarter financial report.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2020-63. Is there any further discussion?
Is that Giacomo? Commissioner Giacomo?
All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item G, deliberate and act on Resolution 2020-64, fiscal year 21 budget adjustment number 3. Michael Ann?
Mayor and Commission, we do bring to you this evening budget adjustment number 3. You will see on the adjustment that we're requesting a temporary transfer, and this is related to our CARES Act funding that we were awarded in the amount of $718,875. This is for the small business relief funds, and so we are in the process, and so I've actually met with 16 businesses this week, and we've coordinated kind of an individual meeting with each of them to go over the terms and conditions. This is a grant program, so we've determined allocations for each of these businesses, and we actually issued the checks today. So in the meantime, we'd like to do a temporary transfer. We've discussed it with DFA. The turnaround time once they receive the reimbursement is about 10 days. So I feel pretty confident that we can disperse these funds and also get the reimbursement back in a pretty timely manner. In our first round of funding, we've determined disbursements of $625,000. So we do have a couple pending applications that we're pending some additional information to make a determination on those awards. And then I believe there was a press release probably today for a second round of funding. And so of the $718,000, we want to make sure that we allocate all of that and that it is, distributed to the businesses in our community that desperately need it. And so one thing that I can share with you in the businesses that I've met with is just, I'm just amazed and inspired by the amount of hope and optimism that they all have, and they all were really, truly grateful to receive this funding.
Right on. I would entertain a motion to approve Resolution 2020-64.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2020-64, fiscal year 21 budget adjustment number 3. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Item G, City Manager's Report. Mr. Berry.
Thank you, Mayor and Commission. I'll start out by making some comments on the CARES Act small business support also. And, I think we feel really good about putting a significant sum of money to work in the community to supporting our small businesses. I know it's been a difficult time for them. I do want to acknowledge the efforts of our partners. We really leaned heavily on Grow Raton, on the Center for Community Innovation, and for Main Street. They did a great job, really did all of the hard work for us. Jessica Barfield did a lot of work. The city clerk and the deputy city clerk have done a lot of work on this, and we have got through with all of the work that we did, or they did, pushing this out fairly quickly. So I think it's a pretty effective process. You'll remember we still have the local government piece that we'll start working on. However, staff here has been really busy on the audit as well, as Michael Ann talked about a little bit, but we are coming up on a December date where our audit is due in the Office of the State Auditor, and so that's not very far off. And it's different this year since the auditor really is not doing any on-site field work. We're doing this, over email and over the phone, and it's a little different. And so there again, our office staff is really working hard on that, focusing that. We have a drop dead date out there, and so that's something that we will have in, but it takes that commitment that we've talked about before here, and the commitment of our auditors as well. So that's going on. We do, with the success of some of the grant funds, that increases the complexity of the audit as well. There is a point where a federal single audit is required, so it's not an easy task. As we talked about with the fixed assets, not an easy task. So I do want to acknowledge the efforts of our staff on that. And while we're at it, I'll acknowledge the efforts of Public Works in response to our snowstorm here. I think that, that was a tough storm, very cold. We had snow, we had ice, but I thought they did a great job. They're really committed to this. They're ready to go right now. We'll see what the weather is over the next 24 hours, but they'll be out there working in this. RPS is commonly out there in cold weather. Waterworks is out there in cold weather, and so this is where maybe other entities call a snow day. The city of Raton is really stepping up their dedication to service to the public. So I want to say thanks to all of our crews there. I also would like to give you a little additional information on the construction report. We've had a lot of construction going on. I don't want to take up a lot of your time on this because it's a big construction year now. This will continue on throughout 2021. We talked about the water line project. It's really going well. We're looking towards the end of that in November, so I think that's going well. I won't comment any more on that. Michael Ann had talked about, and I'll state that we'll call it substantial completion on the Convention Center HVAC project. That's important because we replaced the boiler, and up until just now, we had no way of heating the building. Our contractor did get that in. We know that late October, we're going to get cold weather. We really pushed for that. Heat is on in the building. The project's not 100%. We're still working on some things, but we do have heat on, substantial completion. We'll be wrapping that up. While I'm there, I'll talk about the Schuler Theater, I call it the hospitality room renovation, also substantially complete. There are a couple of minor things to be done on that where we call that finally complete. And my point in tying those two together is that was our non-promotional lodger's tax. I'll try to wrap those up. We'll get you some final numbers. We'll do an assessment for you on where we're at on the non-promo fund because we've got other requests for non-promotional funding. So I'll try to get that information to you, let you deliberate on where we go next. And of course, as we said, lodger's tax on the revenue side really compromised in 2020, and it could remain that way for some time. So we'll loop back around to that. We're on schedule. Progress is good on both the Great Blocks project and on our solid waste transfer station. Construction is going along on those. Really happy with the progress. Those have a ways to go. We'll talk about those for a while longer, so we won't imply that we're close on those projects, but I'll keep you posted. We are ready to commence the Aquatic Center mechanical system project. That was a project with a lot of pieces to it and a little complexity, so that will start around the 1st of November. Michael Landon mentioned the senior center window replacement. That's also starting up. We'll talk about other construction starting up as we go along between now and summer. We've got a lot more out there that's funded and at some stage ready to go, so we'll talk about that as we I did want to report to the commission on the equipment fire that took place last week at the existing transfer station. That consisted of a piece of equipment that we use for grinding wood waste. It's a rather large grinder that's been in service out there since the mid-1990s. The fire did originate in and around that piece of equipment. The piece of equipment was operating at the time. We've been trying to catch up on the yard waste that we have. The fire was out of control. I would report to you that that piece of equipment is a total loss. And most of the fire that you saw from town or you saw pictures of was the actual wood waste pile itself. So homeowners that have tree branches to get rid of, they pile them up there, and then we grind that into chips, which can be used for a compost operation or landscaping. However, the problem is that grinder now is a total loss to us. Now, there is some insurance available on that, probably not replacement value. So we're going to talk again about how to replace that piece of equipment. It is a vital piece of equipment that we can't do without for very long. We're going into winter. There's less yard waste and wood waste in winter, but it piles up faster than you could believe. And so we will need to talk about that. Leading into that, in our November meetings, we will take up the discussion of requests to the New Mexico legislature for the 2021 capital outlay. We had worked through our ICIP. We didn't identify a wood waste grinder. However, I may take a shot at that with you all and with the legislature. We'll research other ways of funding that piece of equipment as well. But the things that we did prioritize, we'll talk about those and try to get that ready in anticipation of the legislative session early in 21. That's all I have, Mayor.
All righty, thank you, Mr. Murray. Just to kind of piggyback on some about the audit. Last week in the Mayor's Caucus, State Auditor Brian Colon was a guest, and he did mention the facts that a lot of these audits are going to be taking place virtually. If you had any issues at all, please contact their office. He says, I don't have an open door policy act, it's because I have no door. And what he did, he actually gave out his personal cell phone. He said, please call me if you have anything. And he went to as far as saying, if you call down here and you get forwarded to an answering machine, I want to know about it because that's not how we do business. So he was very open to help, along also on the CARES Act. Any questions that any of us have, if you feel like your auditor's not giving you the answer that you feel comfortable with, please contact them. And one last thing, during that, this recent health order, restaurants dining indoors are cut back to 25% if you do the New Mexico Safe certification. I went through the program for my senior citizens last week. It takes about 35-40 minutes. It's not, you watch some videos in that. When I did it, there was only one restaurant in Raton that had done it, and only 2 hotels, because it affects hotels as well. If you go through the New Mexico Safe with hotels, you can stay at 60%. So I encourage our restaurants and our hotels to participate in that program. It's not that hard.
And what is that website?
It was on the Department of Health website.
Okay. New Mexico Safe Department.
Yeah, and if you type in New Mexico Safe certification, it pops it up.
We will try to put a link to that on the city website as well, right?
But it was on the last Department of Health notice that they put, they had the link on there.
Right, right.
Commissioner Chatterley, any comments?
Just that I looked on my email and the replacement from Marcia Medina was Crystal Sanchez.
Sanchez. Okay, good.
Got the name.
All right. Commissioner Giacomo, anything?
Nothing here, thank you.
You bet. Commissioner Chavez?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
Nope, all is good.
All righty. Since there is nothing else, we are adjourned. Thank you.